In this tutorial, we're going to take a walkthrough of Epicor Advanced Requisition Management, which is an online workflow and purchase requisition solution. This tutorial is going to be aimed at presenting a high-level overview of each of the different steps in ARM, and to that end, it's also going to serve as a training tool for those of you that are perhaps presenting the solution for the very first time. So as I mentioned, we're going to look at the full process today. We're going to begin with navigating around the ARM interface. Then we are going to create and submit a requisition, and that's going to be for both a catalog and a non-catalog item. Then we're going to look at the approval process. We're going to involve a few people to provide approval on that requisition. And then we're going to receive the resulting purchase order, and then we're going to show that purchase order in Kinetic. So the first screen that you can see in front of you is the login screen. And the first thing you want to do is log in as an administrator. So log in as an administrator, and I'm presented with the main ARM screen. On the left-hand side, the green column here will help us display any of the different documents that exist within the solution. So for example, show me all of the requisitions. I can click all requisitions, and then in the center of the screen, you'll see all of the requisitions which currently exist, and their statuses will appear to you. So this will navigate to all of the different documents in the system. Moving across the top, we can hide that side menu by clicking the three buttons listed at the top left. We have a home screen which will always return us to the main screen view that we started on. We have a file icon which will enable us to begin new kinds of documents, whichever documents we have access to in the system. We also see a little refresh button here which, when clicked, will show us all of the recent documents that we have accessed in the system. Moving across, we can see our login name here, administrator in this case. We also see a bell icon that, very much like a LinkedIn or Facebook concept, will show us all of the, all of the different tasks or all of the latest things that have happened that might require our attention. And then moving down, we have a dashboard which shows us all of the tasks that we need to complete given our level of access in the system. And down the very bottom and center, we see these four white columns, and these white columns are all about configuring ARM to behave the way that it needs to. So setting up new users, assigning roles to them. And importantly today, we're going to have a look at the Approvals Maintenance menu. So click on Approvals Maintenance. And what this does now is it opens a screen which shows all of the approval trees configured for all of the different companies within my organization. Now, in our example today, we're just going to deal with the one company, and you can see that a number of different trees or different approval mechanisms can be applied for each company. We are only using one today, which is an advanced type of tree for requisition approval. So go across to Go to Active Tree, open that up, and you'll see that we have a number of names here and some conditions for approval. If I click on the I next to Jen, because she's the most furthest indented name in this list, she and Adam will be the first approvers, so the first people who see a requisition that comes through for approval. But they will be approving based on different criteria. Now, ARM supports what we call multi-dimensional approval, which means more than one tree can be triggered at any one point in time. For Jen, we can see that she can approve any requisition up to $1,000, but only if that requisition requires approval for the location main. So if anybody from the location main is raising a requisition and they submit that requisition, it will need to go through Jen first to be approved. Now, in addition to that, if we look at Roy is also set up within this approval tree, but for a very different reason. Roy's approval limit is $25,000, but you'll also notice that he is responsible for approving category-based requisitions. And essentially what this is saying here is anything related to IT, in other words, a category or a class of purchase, needs to go through Roy if it's related to IT. Now that's very different to Jen, because Jen, of course, was location-based. Roy is category-based. So we can set up all of these different nodes on the trees for different reasons, and all of these could trigger in parallel, or as we say, multi-dimensionally, when a requisition gets submitted. Let's log off by going to the top right-hand side, log off, and log back in as Maurice, which is our base level user. And when we sign in, we can see that the screen is a lot more stripped back. There's a lot fewer options for Maurice. But we're going to begin a new requisition by clicking the file icon and selecting requisition. When the screen opens, we're presented with a header. We can name this. I'm just going to call it My Rec. And now it's my job to find all of the things that I wish to purchase. So if I click the Add button, let's firstly add something from our catalog. So I click catalog. All of the things, all of the items that are in my database for selection will now appear to me. And I can view them a bunch of ways. I could look at them in a grid format, which will show me some pictures. I could see a list view, which is a similar concept, but maybe laid out with a slightly different format. Or my preferred way is a table view, which can show me more of it, but just text in one view. Now, of course, I could use the header view to filter down, but in our case today, let's say that we want to add 3 of these components 00C1. So I enter 3. You can see that by default, it's going to purchase these from the vendor ACME. This is actually drawing upon the preferred vendor set against this particular item in Epicor. And I will add those items on the top right and then select Finish. So what I've now done is I've added a catalog line to my requisition. We can see now that we have the vendor appearing, the quantity that we selected. We can see how many of these are on order already. We have a fully formed GL account code that we could look at. And to that end, we also have, for this particular GL account code, a budget availability indicator which updates in near real time and takes into account purchase orders that are already out in the field but perhaps haven't been committed to the GL. So in this case, as you can see, we don't have budget available, and if we were to submit this, we're going to be $41.85 in the red. Let's now go ahead and add another type of item. Let's add a non-catalog item. So this is going to be for situations where either the thing that wants to be purchased doesn't exist in any database that you have set up, or maybe it's not a physical thing at all. Commonly, it could be a request for services. Let's perhaps say that it's going to be for a computer repair on site. So I'm going to add computer repair. I need to enter the category of purchase. In this case, it's already defaulted to computer related, which is fine. That's what we want it to do. I will need to enter a vendor. So enter the vendor ABE, that's the electronics supplier. And let's say that the unit cost has been agreed in advance to be $300. Now notice that because we potentially haven't requested this thing in the past, we don't at this point know things like GL account codes, and you can actually see that it's blank at the moment. But because ARM relies on a lot of automation, one of the things that it can do for non-catalog requests is look at the information that has been provided and try to build that GL account code. So when I click Save now, if you have a look at the GL account code field, 123, click Save, it now populates, and in this case, it's been able to fill that GL account code completely. So we can save and close that now. Now our requisition has both a catalog line and a non-catalog line. I'm going to submit this for approval now, and when I do so, by clicking the Submit button, you will notice that on the right-hand side of the screen, I will see the various approvers, as configured in our approval trees, will now be prompted and they will appear on screen. So I will now click Submit, 1, 2, 3, and as promised, on the right-hand side of the screen, we now see that Jen has been sent an email asking her to approve this particular request. We can also see that against these 3 little buttons, we have Roy involved to approve just the second line. Why that? Well, if we click the workflow button, we can see a visual representation of what's occurring in terms of workflow here. Jen will need to give approval because she is responsible for this particular location, but also for Roy, because Roy is responsible for approving computer-related expenditures. And as we know, that miscellaneous or that non-catalog request that we placed was for a computer-related repair, then he, as well as Jen, needs to give approval for just that second line. So I'm going to log in as Jen now and show you what the approval process actually looks like. So we log off, we log in as Jen. Signing in as Jen, we can see on her dashboard that she has requisitions which require her approval. And as an approver, that's one of the prompts that she will see. I can click on that link. It will take me to the requisition screen. The most recently submitted requisitions will appear at the top. So we can click on that one. This is Maurice's requisition, as we know. The only difference really is that Jen has the option to approve, or by clicking workflow, she could actually reject the entire requisition as well. That's all of the lines at once. Or we could selectively decline individual lines. So for example, if I didn't want component C1 to be approved, I could click the thumbs down arrow icon, and I have a field which appears, and I could put in a reason as to why this was being declined, click OK, and that line will play no further role in the approval process. But let's say for the example today, I'm happy to approve the entirety of this requisition. I click approve, and now you can see on the right-hand side, Jen's name disappears, her role is done, and we're just waiting now on Roy to give approval for the second line. Let's now log in as Roy and approve his side of the requisition. So I log off, logging back in as Roy. The same as Jen, we have a requisition prompt requiring approval. We click on that. It opens the same requisition screen. We go back into requisition number 578. And here is our partially approved requisition. Notice that Roy can only approve or decline the second line. Let's just go ahead and approve everything today. And because this is the last point of approval, what we have told ARM to do at this point is to generate the purchase order automatically as soon as approval is given by the last person. That's Roy. And so when I click approve, notice that the approval in progress icon on the right-hand side is about to change. I click approve, 1, 2, 3. Approval is now complete. We no longer see any names down the right-hand side of any of the lines on our requisition. We also see that this has now been ordered. And if I click the tracker view, I'm able to see the workflow as it appears up to this point in time. So I click tracker, and we can see that we began with requisition number 578. We have gone through an approval process, and now that approval has been given, we now have 2 separate lines and 2 separate purchase orders. Purchase order number 4570, that's going to the vendor ACME. That was for component 00C1. And we also have purchase order number 4571, which is going to the vendor ABE. That's for the computer-related repair. The next step would be to either receive the incoming purchase order, or in the case of the computer services, that might merely be a confirmation that the work has been carried out. Now for this role, we need to log in as Rachel. So I'm going to log in now as Rachel. Rachel is what we call an order receiver. So she receives purchase orders, and you can see that on her dashboard, it's just one prompt letting her know that there are purchase orders ready to be received. Now, of course, our requisition generated 2 purchase orders. Let's just look at the ACME purchase order that was made today. We click on that. It now opens the purchase order. Now, in the purchase order, we can see that originally we've ordered 3 of these components 00C1. It may be the case that not all 3 have arrived at our warehouse or our receiving location. So we are free to maybe enter 1 or 2 or 0, whatever we like to do. We could receive them and leave the order open. But for the example today, let's assume that all 3 have arrived. We're going to receive the purchase order in full and close it. So what we need to do is to click on the receive button, enter the date if it's a required field. We could obviously add some notes and some attachments if we need to, and then we click receive. Once we click receive, we should be able to see over the right-hand side of the screen that this purchase order is now closed. At this point, it's worthy of refreshing the screen, because the last thing to point out is that on the PO screen that we're looking at now, there is a field here that says ERP PO number. One of the big benefits of ARM is that we have currently 46 points of integration between ARM and Epicor, which means all of this information that we're putting into ARM is syncing through to Epicor and updating its system. And you can see there that this particular PO in ARM has been assigned an ERP purchase order number 4570. Now that, of course, is going to be different in your particular environment, but if we were to open the purchase order tracker in Epicor and type in that PO number, it should show us the same purchase order that we've generated through ARM. So let's do that now. If I open my purchase order tracker in Epicor and type in 4570, I should be able to see that the purchase order itself appears 4570. There it is, in Kinetic, approved and ready to go. But importantly, nobody was actually in that system to do that. It's all been done from ARM.